Hello my friends, and welcome back to another Baldur's Gate 3 character building guide. Hope you're all doing well. Today we're covering my pick for the best Barbarian build in Baldur's Gate 3. This is an update video to my previous build of the same name, but as a first amongst these build guides, not only has the build changed significantly because of patches and the way that damage is calculated and the updates to Honor mode, my opinion of what the best Barbarian build is and how to build the strongest possible Barbarian in Baldur's Gate has changed significantly since that video was recorded. So I wanted to re-record this one not only to cover the things that have changed in the actual game, but also to update the build to what I now think is the most powerful way to build a Barbarian. Before I begin, I do want to take a quick moment to say thank you so much to Wreckers B for the 100 rupees, Dream Rook Media for the $10, and Fermioff for the $20, as well as Amit Emirchelik, Fermioff again, and Jorg Caprano for becoming channel members. Thank you so much, my friends. I really do appreciate it, and as always, if I have mispronounced any of your names, please do let me know in the comments. Alright, let's get to the build. So, what are we trying to do when we're building a Barbarian? Well, Barbarians want two things. They want to move fast, and they want to break things, like a Silicon Valley billionaire. Barbarians have fast movement, which allows them to get near any enemy on the field, and they have some of the highest damage output in the game, and they have the highest health of any class in the game. That means they can always be on the front lines, engaging the most dangerous enemies, or getting to the enemy back lines and forcing the enemies to react to their movement. In this way, the Barbarian is a line breaker. You will use it to crash through enemy formations, disrupting what they're doing and dealing damage to the most important targets. The flow of combat will follow what your Barbarian is doing, and so it's important that our Barbarian be built to enable that playstyle of jumping into the front lines and ruining whatever the enemy is trying to do by getting up in their face and kicking the crap out of them. That's really all that we have to do when we're building a Barbarian. The concept is very simple, but the execution, I think, actually has a lot of subtlety to it that is sometimes missed in Barbarian build guides. I'm using Karlach as the example character here, since obviously she's the Barbarian of the party, although it's worth noting that Zariel Tiefling is probably the worst race in the game for a Barbarian. Karlach herself makes up for this with her unique soul coin mechanics, which improve her Barbarian rages, but if you're building this as a custom character, then Zariel Tiefling is not what I would pick, because the smites don't work very well with Barbarian rages. If you are building a custom Barbarian, though, it mostly doesn't matter what race you pick. Barbarians operate very independently of the racial bonuses available in the game. You have all the proficiencies for weapons and armor that you need, so you don't need any of those from race. So if you're looking for the most powerful, it's probably Wood Elf, giving you the bonus movement speed, Half Orc for the additional damage on critical hits, which can be quite valuable, or Githyanki just for the once per day Misty Step. Even though you can't use that while raging, it's still excellent to be able to reposition. But for the most part, it won't matter to a great extent what race you pick for your Barbarian. Similarly, your background won't matter. That mostly governs your skills, and you already have access to all the skills that you need as a Barbarian in general anyways, so you don't need to worry too much about race and background, and can pick those for flavor. Next, we have to fix our attribute scores. Karlach's starting attribute scores are actually not as far off from being correct as many of the origin characters' attribute scores are. You do have 3 odd numbers, which is fairly painful, but we're closer to correct numbers than many of the companion characters actually end up in Baldur's Gate. But obviously, we want to fix these to be as optimal as possible, so let's go ahead and do that. We're going to drop Strength down to 16, because 16 gives the same bonus as 17, buff Dex up to 16, and drop Charisma down to 8, and then put Constitution up to 16. So as you can see, pretty minor adjustments, but we just want to even out these numbers to maximize our bonuses. For our skill selection here, you are just going to make sure that you have Athletics and Perception. These are the only skills that really matter for Barbarians, although the Barbarian unique Intimidate dialogue options are very funny, so I personally recommend taking Intimidate proficiency. And then with Karlach, you also have the Thaumaturgy cantrip, so you can use those and benefit from those as you go through the world, because they're extremely hilarious and definitely worth pursuing. Also, often the difficulty classes on Barbarians' Intimidate checks are very low, so you don't need to have any charisma to succeed on them. It's also worth mentioning that because this is a strength-based character, like every strength-based character in Baldur's Gate 3, you can get a significant benefit by decreasing your strength to 8 and instead drinking an elixir of hill giant strength every day. That will make us stronger without having to spend feats on it. We'll start the early game significantly stronger. I don't like to recommend doing that in general because I find it a little bit annoying to drink an elixir every day, but you will power up your character if you're willing to do that, and you can stockpile enough of them in the early game to last you the entire game, so it's definitely worth mentioning that Hill Giant elixirs will massively power up your character if you want to do that. If you're going that route, you would drop your strength to 8, put the remaining points into dexterity and wisdom, just to give yourself the most relevant bonuses. Other than that, no major decisions to make at level 1, although it is worth taking a moment here to talk about Barbarians' 2 major class features that they get access to at level 1. Rage and Unarmored Defense. So Unarmored Defense lets you add your Constitution in addition to your Dexterity to your armor class when you are unarmored. This works while you have a shield equipped, but not while you have armor equipped. However, Barbarians get medium armor proficiency, so most of the time you won't actually be using the Unarmored Defense feature. You'll be better off just wearing medium armor. There are some with very powerful enchantments in the game that synergize very well with Barbarian's kit, so typically you won't get a lot of use out of this ability, but it's worth noting if you find a set of clothing that you would rather have than the medium armor, that you can wear it without decreasing your armor class too much. Next, Rage. Rage takes a bonus action to activate and gives you additional damage and resistance to physical damage. That means that you can go up against enemies without magic weapons, which is most enemies in the early game, very safely, and also, of course, you get additional damage as you are up in their faces. When you are raging, you are very hard to hurt for most early game enemies, and that means that your barbarian can be put into more dangerous situations than any other character. That's one of the great things about playing a barbarian, is you can get away with stuff that other characters simply wouldn't be able to because of the power of rage. It does mean that you have to use your bonus action at the beginning of combat, which does actually constrain your actions a little bit because you can't jump, and often martial characters would want to start combat by jumping. But Rage is a very powerful ability, so get used to activating it every combat. Alright, that's level 1, let's move on to level 2. At level 2, we have no decisions to make in terms of what abilities we're selecting as we level up, but we do get 2 new class abilities, one of which is worth talking about. The other one is Danger Sense, which at time of recording literally doesn't work. It's bugged and does nothing, so it's safely ignorable, but even if it did something, it would not actually be a significant bonus for the character, so it's not that bad for us that it's bugged and doesn't work. On the other hand, Reckless Attack is awesome. Reckless Attack lets you turn misses into hits, because whenever you miss an attack, the game will allow you to roll a Reckless Attack in order to convert that miss into a hit by rolling with advantage. The cost of this is that enemies roll with advantage against you, but this is actually in some ways a good thing. Enemies in Baldur's Gate choose who they target based on how easy it is for them to land that attack, and you would almost always rather that the enemies be targeting your barbarian than anybody else. You'll be taking half damage from non-magical weapons, which is already great, so enemies who target you are going to be doing half as much damage as against the rest of your party, and you've got more hit points than anyone else, so it's typically good if the enemies are targeting your barbarian. Also, if you Reckless Attack, you roll with advantage, and one thing that this does is double your chance at critical hits, so you can give yourself the most chance to critically hit, sometimes by Reckless Attacking, even if you weren't going to miss your attack. You can Reckless Attack before swinging, if you are just fishing for a critical hit. So there's a lot of ways that you can use this ability, either just the sort of level 1 play with Reckless Attack, which is just turning misses into hits, is very, very strong, or you can increase your chance of getting criticals by Reckless Attacking proactively, or cause enemies to target you by Reckless Attacking proactively, which is extremely powerful and helps you manipulate the battlefield in your favor. Reckless Attack is a great ability that you really want to get used to the nuances of using, when to use it reactively, when to use it proactively, and when not to use it because you want to try to conserve your hit points are all really interesting decisions that you're going to make as you're playing a Barbarian. In general, though, the best use for Reckless Attack is just use it whenever you're going to miss an attack, because hitting attacks is good, and Reckless Attacking prevents you from missing. No other decisions, though, so let's go on to level 3. At level 3, we get our first major decision that we're going to make, and this is where this build diverges from the previous build that I recommended. So, for our class, we get to choose between Wildheart, Berserker, and Wild Magic Barbarian. And then if we go Wildheart, we get to choose between 5 different bestial hearts. In my previous Best Barbarian video, I recommended Berserker Barbarian for maximum damage. But in Baldur's Gate, Berserker Barbarian tends to lend itself towards a throwing weapon style rather than a melee style. So players looking for a Barbarian build where you are trying to break the enemy lines and run into melee, I think are actually going to be much better off playing a Wildheart Barbarian. Of the 5 Wildheart variants, all 5 I think are viable, but the one that I think is strongest in Baldur's Gate is Tiger's Heart. Tiger Heart is a little easy to overlook because the tooltip for the abilities that it gives you is so bad. It increases your jump distance by 15 feet, which is awesome. Being able to jump 15 feet further is a huge boost to your mobility. In the first turn that you rage, it won't be significant for you because you'll have spent your bonus action on raging, so you won't be able to jump that far, but every subsequent turn this lets you position next to the enemy that you most want to hit, which is extremely useful. But the real bonus here is Tiger's Bloodlust. This tooltip does not actually tell you what this ability does, but the ability itself is extremely powerful. You swing in an arc, meaning that you do an AoE swing, and this just takes an attack action, so it just takes one of your multiple attacks if you have multiple attacks per turn, and you can use it every turn. It doesn't cost any resource, and it does damage in a wide AoE arc. It does half the damage that your weapon dice plus your strength modifier would normally do, but then adds any other additional damage that you're doing on top of that. So the numbers are a little bit weird there. What that means is that any bonuses that you have, like damage from Rage or damage from Great Weapon Master, the feat, get applied to every enemy that you hit with Tiger's Bloodlust. This means you're doing a massive amount of damage in an AoE, and any enemy that you hit starts bleeding. There's no saving throw against this effect, they just start bleeding immediately, and bleed, while itself it is not an extremely powerful ability, although the small amount of bonus damage is relevant, has a ton of synergy in this game, and allows you to really power up your character by inflicting tons of powerful conditions on enemies. So Tiger's Bloodlust gives you AoE damage, gives you the ability to inflict a lot of extremely powerful conditions, and lets you apply your damage to multiple enemies in an incredibly powerful and effective way. It also just lets you break the lines of enemies by charging right into the middle of them, swinging an axe around in a big circle, which is, of course, very fun. So I'm going to recommend, for the Best Barbarian, that we take Tiger Heart. At level 4, we could change our Bestial Heart if we weren't happy, but obviously we've picked the one that we want, and we get a feat. If you went for the Strength Elixir build, whether you went for the Strength Elixir build or not, the first feat that you're going to take, I think, is actually the same. And that feat is going to be Great Weapon Master. You'll often see people recommend that you not get Great Weapon Master right away because your hit bonus will be low. But Great Weapon Master is really, really powerful at early stages. It causes you to take a -5 to your attack roll, so you're less likely to hit, but a +10 damage to every attack that you make. And remember that we can apply this across multiple enemies thanks to our Tiger's Bloodlust swing, so all of them will be taking full damage from the Great Weapon Master strike. And, because we're a barbarian, we have Reckless Attack. That means we're always attacking with advantage, which almost by itself negates the -5 attack roll penalty. Advantage on most common dice that you're going to have to roll, like against most enemies, is approximately equivalent to a +4 bonus. So we've almost entirely negated the attack roll penalty from Great Weapon Master against most common enemies. The math is a little more complicated than that, but if you think of it that way, then that's an approximation that will serve you well. What that means is that we're just doing plus 10 damage on every attack. And if you see an enemy that you are really going to struggle hitting, you could just turn off Great Weapon Master. You don't have to use it. It also gives you, whenever you land a critical hit, which remember, we have Reckless Attack, we're very likely to land critical hits because we will be attacking with advantage against multiple enemies per turn. Or kill a target with a melee weapon attack, you can make another melee attack as a bonus action that turn. That extra melee attack can be another Tiger's Bloodlust swing, so you can continue to make attacks as long as you keep killing enemies or landing critical hits, both of which you're extremely likely to do. So it's great for your damage and great for your action economy, huge boost to your character, and you definitely want to get it very early. At Barbarian level 5, we get fast movement and extra attack, which are of course excellent. They increase your character's ability to reach enemies and doubles your damage output, which is obviously awesome. No other decisions to make, but these abilities are huge for barbarians, and this is where your character really comes online. And then at level 6, we get to take an animal aspect. There are two animal aspects that we care about here. One is Aspect of the Beast Tiger, and the other is Aspect of the Beast Wolverine. Tiger gives us the ability to add our strength modifier to attack rolls against bleeding or poisoned targets, and everything we hit is going to be bleeding. This means that we will be adding double our strength modifier to our to-hit rolls against most enemies, so we're completely negating the Great Weapon Master penalty, thanks to advantage and Aspect of the Beast Tiger. Our attacks have suddenly become extremely accurate, and we can just land swing after swing after swing, bleeding large groups of enemies and causing them to be very easy to hit. The other option is Aspect of the Beast Wolverine. This gives us, whenever you attack a bleeding or poison target, you also maim it for one turn. Maim reduces enemy movement speed to 0, which is incredible. They'll then be stuck adjacent to you, so they will be forced to fight your powerful melee character. And there's a number of cool synergies with maim as well. If an enemy is knocked prone, normally on their turn, they use their movement to stand back up. But if they are maimed, they have 0 movement, and so if you have enemies who are prone, often they will just skip their turn because they have no movement with which to stand back up. They patched some of the cases out where this happens when they introduce Honor Mode, but not all of them, so you will still see enemies skipping their turn. It used to be 100% reliable that they would skip your turn, but now they won't always do it with the Wolverine maim and prone, but you will definitely see it, and if you knock enemies over using some items that we will talk about later on, or other characters who can push enemies prone, or just by shoving them off a cliff yourself, you're going to see maimed enemies often skip their turn entirely because they have 0 movement and are prone, and thus unable to stand up. We are going to want both of them, but I think you will want Tiger first, because this will just make your attacks more likely to land, but if you're not finding that you're missing, Wolverine is also really good. At Barbarian level 7, you get Feral Instinct, which is amazing. Feral Instinct is +3 to your initiative, giving you a total bonus of +5 with your 14 dexterity, meaning that you're very likely to win initiative against most enemies in the game. Winning initiative is incredible, of course, because it lets you get up next to them, but also because it lets you activate Rage before they hit you. So you're going to take less damage and lock down enemies with bleeding effect, maiming effect, prone effects, and so on, while layering massive amounts of damage on them. Winning initiative is always really important, but for melee characters it's especially important because it lets you get next to vulnerable enemies before they can act and lock them down with the incredible damage output that you're doing. Feral Instinct, I think, is one of the best class features in the game, so getting to Barbarian level 7 for it is really, really nice. Finally, at Barbarian level 8, we get another feat, which gives us the ability to increase our strength. We want to just boost our strength to maximum at this point, although if you have if you're using strength elixirs, then you'll be able to take additional feats on top of this. There's a couple different options here. You can take alert, you can take savage attacker for more damage, although it's a little bit worse because of how the Tiger Barbarian swing interacts with damage dice. Or you can take something like Sentinel to keep enemies trapped next to you, or Mage Slayer to really disrupt magical enemies. There's a lot of cool options for you, but for most characters, for most characters with the strength bonus, you're just going to want to take alert, and with the strength elixirs, you're just going to want to take alert, because winning initiative is so important. If you aren't using strength elixirs, then you just take the ability improvement to boost your strength. At Barbarian level 9, we get Brutal Critical, which increases the amount of damage that we are doing whenever we get critical hits, and we should regularly get at least 1 critical hit per turn, because usually you're going to be able to hit at least 2 enemies with your Tiger swings, and so that's 4 dice that you're rolling. With any improved critical gear, you're going to be landing lots of critical hits. Brutal Critical makes those do more damage, so it's incredibly powerful. This character actually does pretty well with improved critical gear as a result, just because of how many attacks we're making per turn and how many dice we're rolling on every attack, thanks to advantage. So we can get a lot of benefit out of increasing our damage by getting Brutal Critical. At Barbarian level 10, we get our next animal aspect, and we're going to pick up Aspect of the Beast Wolverine. So there are alternate ways to build this character that only pick up Wolverine, and you can just grab that at 6 and then leave Barbarian. This way is the best way to do it monoclassed, but I will mention a couple multi-class options as well after this video. For now, though, I talked about why Wolverine is so good, so we definitely want it. And then at Barbarian level 11, we get Relentless Rage, which gives us the ability to stay at 1 hit point instead of being killed when at once per short rest. This is usually not going to come up, but is occasionally a nice panic button, though a lot of enemies do multiple instances of damage and will just kill you straight through it, so don't rely on this defensive feature. And then finally, at Barbarian level 12, we get more rage charges, but we also just get to increase our strength to maximum, doing the most damage possible. This way, our character is now hitting for very reliable criticals and tons of damage with every attack, and can hit multiple enemies. We also have 125 hit points without any increases to our stats or hit points, so we are extremely resilient to enemy attacks. Alright, that's a Barbarian. Let's talk about items. This character has a lot of really fun item options, but first, I guess let's talk about our weapons. So, this character actually needs more specific weapons. Normally I would just say, just pick up whatever the highest damage two-handed weapon you can find is, but for this character, you actually have a slightly different need when you're looking at weapons. The reason for this is how Tiger's Bloodlust works, the Tiger Bloodlust swing, and where it halves the damage. So let's take a look at Nirolna here. When you can see Nirolna's damage, 11 to 23, is broken down into 2 parts, 1d8 or 1d6 plus 9, and the plus 1d6 Thunder. When you are using Tiger's Bloodlust, the damage will be halved in this line, but not in this line. So it's going to halve this 1d8 plus 9 damage, but then add any rider effects at full value. So what you're looking for when you're looking for two-handed weapons is weapons that have lots of additional rider damage on them, not necessarily weapons that have super high base damage. So just keep an eye on this breakdown as you're going through the game and picking weapons, and try to pick ones that have a lot of additional rider effects. The other thing that you can do is just have weapons that have cool on-hit effects. We're going to be hitting a lot of enemies because we swing with our weapons, and the Tiger's Bloodlust stuff works very well because it will hit multiple enemies, and it always triggers the on-hit effects. One of my very favorites of these is the Skin Burster, which you can get very early and will serve you very well throughout the game, because Skin Burster gives you Force Conduit whenever you deal melee damage with this weapon, which you can do up to 3 times per Tiger's Bloodlust swing, or if you're if you kill one enemy, up to 9 times per turn before you have any haste or anything along those lines. And that will stack Force Conduit. Force Conduit reduces any damage you take by 1 per turn remaining, which is an incredible survivability buff for your character, especially because against enemies with non-magical weapons, you'll be taking half damage. So even though this isn't the highest damage or most accurate weapon, it gives you a lot of defensive options. The other option is to take weapons that have some kind of condition applied to them because of another item synergy that this character uses exceptionally well, and that's Reverberation. Items like the Boots of Stormy Clamor stack Reverberation on an enemy, which gives them a huge penalty to strength and dexterity, which is a pretty significant effect if you can stack up a lot of Reverberation. And if you get to 5, then they fall prone and take some damage. So if we can stack our Reverberation up to 5, it'll knock enemies over. We can do that just by applying conditions, and well, what's a condition? Bleed is a condition. We're applying that every turn. Maim is a condition. We're applying that every turn, and you'll recognize prone from when I talked about maim, because when an enemy is prone and maimed, they usually can't get back up, or often that will be the case depending on some circumstances. I think that the patch for this was not perfect, so it will still happen sometimes, and sometimes it won't. But the basic idea here is every time you hit an enemy, you would inflict both bleed and maim. So that is 4 ticks of Reverberation already. So if you're inflicting any other condition with your attack, that will immediately knock enemies prone. Or if we have another source of Reverberation, like the Gloves of Belligerent Skies, combined with thunder, lightning, or radiant damage on our weapon, then we can knock enemies prone immediately with a single attack. That will then give us advantage on our future rolls against them, and is just a huge bonus to killing enemies overall. One other way to apply a condition is poisons. Any poison that you have, it looks like I don't actually have a vial of it on this character, but any vial of poison that you have, oh no, here we go, like a basic poison, you can apply to your weapon, and this will apply to every swing you make with your Tigerheart weapon. It'll apply the poison across the entire swing of the weapon. So you can instantly apply poison to a bunch of enemies, which will as well as bleed and maim, which is a condition and is going to apply the Reverberation, knocking enemies prone, preventing them from getting up, and so on. This is a hugely synergistic package that powers up this character even more. You also can benefit just from, other than that, you're going to want mobility skills, and you're going to want defense, so anything that gives you mobility, like Amulet of Misty Step, or the Silk Strider boots, or whatever, the what are these called? The Disintegrating Nightwalkers, excuse me. And anything that gives you additional armor class are pretty good for this character as well, so just to keep yourself alive. Even though you do want to get targeted by enemies, more armor class means they'll miss more often, so that can be pretty good as well. You also just want the best medium armor that you can wear throughout the game, and for the early part of the game, that'll be the Adamantine Scale Mail, but basically you're just looking for the highest armor class here, or for a magical effect that you think is cool. The Adamantine Scale Mail is particularly nice for this character for the entire mid-game, because enemies can't critically hit you when you're wearing it, and remember, we are twice as likely to critically hit because of our advantage on every attack. Enemies are twice as likely to critically hit us because they have advantage because of reckless attack. So Adamantine Scale Mail makes that much less likely, and the damage reduction stacks with your Skin Burster damage reduction if that's something that you're doing. Other than that, you're just looking for items that give you initiative, mobility, and defensive stats, saving throws, and armor class, just like every other character in the game. But this character really uses the boots and gloves effect very powerfully, and so that is one that is worth calling out specifically. For multiclassing, there's really one option that stands far and away above the others for this character, and that is to take 4 levels of Fighter. You would do that as your last 4 levels, so we will take 4 levels of Fighter. We take Great Weapon Fighting, because it's going to work extremely well with our Great Weapon Fighting, and then we would use the same stats and everything. And the reason for this is that you can still get a feat with 4 levels of Fighter, but you also get to take Action Surge. Action Surge powers up your character massively, and you get your choice of Battle Master or Champion Fighter. I'm going to recommend, even though you're usually going to use your Tiger's Bloodlust swings, to take Battle Master Fighter over Champion. Eldritch Knight is actually kind of interesting as well. It has negative synergy with Rage, but you can still use the Shield spell while raging, thanks to a bug. So Eldritch Knight giving you the Shield spell is pretty useful as well. But Battle Master maneuvers give you a whole extra set of options, but most importantly, they give you precision attack, which means that on important attacks, you're very likely to actually land your attack, and riposte, which gives you something to do as a reaction. This character mostly is missing a reaction from its options, so adding in riposte gives us a reaction where we can do stuff on our opponent's turn, and then we can take something like trip attack just to guarantee enemy proning effects. Then we would just take the normal feat that we would take, which in that case would be +4 strength. You would do this as your last 4 levels after having hit Barbarian 8, and instead of taking the animal aspect of the tiger, you would take the Wolverine at level 6, just to make sure that you have the maim. So that is my pick for the best multi-classing option for this character, but for the most part, this character actually does extremely well as a mono-classing character. You can power it up a little bit with Action Surge, but the tiger animal aspect is worth a lot, so being a mono-class barbarian is great. Alright, my friends, I hope that you've enjoyed this look at the best barbarian in Baldur's Gate 3, in my opinion, and of course, as always, if you have, feel free to leave a comment and like the video. Both of those things help me out a ton with the algorithm, and I do read every comment that I get, although I unfortunately don't have the time to reply to all of them. I will definitely read everything that you write, so, you know, let me know what you think. And, of course, if you've enjoyed the video, you can subscribe to my channel for more of this and other strategy game content. Cheers, folks. I'll catch you next time.